Welcome to the Inflection Podcast, where we explore the pivotal moments that have shaped us into who we are today. I am your host, Anabi, and I can't wait to dive into these moments with you. Let's get it. Welcome to this episode of the Inflection Podcast. It's freaking fantastic to have the man, the myth, the legend, Anthony Ferrara with me today. Anthony is the head designer and founder of Oxy Co., a leading design studio out here in our neck of the woods, Phoenix, Arizona. It's fantastic to have you with me here today, Anthony.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to talk to you. We do this every week anyways. We're just recording it now.
Yeah, we always have those cool conversations, and I walk away thinking, dang it, I wish we could record one of these someday. So I'm glad it's finally happening. And here we are after a couple years of saying, oh, let's record someday. It has happened. I appreciate you making the time. You have a very unique experience, unique story with getting your agency started and scaling it over the past years, 7+ years. How many years have you been doing it now?
I started when I was 15 years old. I got my first client, $30 an hour, thanks to a mentor of mine who showed me everything, showed me the ropes. So I'm 32 now, so 17. I've been a designer for 17 years. I've only ran the agency for about 4 or 5 years, formally as Oxy. But yeah, been a designer my whole life.
Oh my gosh, that's a lifetime for many. And I bet through that process, it's not been a bed of roses, or maybe it has been. But what has that looked like along your journey? Obviously, as a designer, you've probably faced challenges. And then as a business owner, which it's one thing to just do design as a freelancer, but building a business around it is no chump change. So what has that looked like for you as you look back on the years?
Yeah, I feel like there's like phases of my career. Like the early days, you're just learning how to use a computer. I was just barely learning how to use a computer, and really like lots of internships and just learning the software and forming a design process, some repeatable pattern questions that you ask clients, learning the lingo. What's a wireframe? What's a component? What's a user journey? Stuff like that. I feel like the first like 10 years was just learning and feeling confident in like the language that you're using and the tools and being comfortable in your own skin. Just like, what do I say on a call? And
Yeah.
am I doing anything wrong? It's like people call it imposter syndrome, but I hate the word imposter syndrome. It's just learning.
Yeah.
It takes a long time to get good at anything. So that was maybe the first phase of just like being confident in the skill and the finding your own process and the language that you develop over copying people and seeing people more talented than you and comparing yourself to people not in your market, but in the world.
Yeah.
And the business side of it, first phase as a designer, you're just trying to like create stuff that looks good and that works. The next phase is whether it's like making money or like getting recognition, trying to add that business layer on top of it. All right, I know what I'm doing, but how do I charge? And how do I make sure I don't not get paid? And how do I continue to sell additional projects to my existing clients? So I think those are the two phases. It's like first 10 years of my career was learning and feeling confident about being a designer. The next 10 years, which I'm at the tail end of, year 17, is scaling, teaching, building a business, building a reputation, consistently doing great work, getting repeat customers, capturing all that value. But that's the best way I could summarize.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, that's fantastic. And something you mentioned about the imposter syndrome versus learning, I really resonate with that. Over the years, I think of going a lot more comfortable with forever being an imposter, forever learning. And one of the frameworks, I'm a big fan of frameworks and mental models.
Same.
Well, one of the things I came across was actually from a marksmanship class that I took some years ago. And we talked about 4 stages of learning, and it's unconscious incompetence of you're dumb as a brick about that specific subject. You don't even know what you don't know. You don't know the lingo, and you don't know that you don't know it. And then as you learn some more, you get over to, I think the next one is conscious incompetence. Now, oh crap, I'm dumb as a brick here. I know a few things, but now you also begin to have a sense for, man, there's so much more I don't know. Many folks quit at that stage because you even feel more stupid than you did when you were blissfully ignorant. Now you've learned some things and you realize, oh my gosh, there's a lot more I don't know. And then you move over to conscious competence. You're learning, folks, some people might even consider you an expert because if they ask you a question, you can answer, but you still have to think about it, maybe do some research. The golden grail is unconscious competence, where you don't even have to think about it. Now, it doesn't mean you're like God level genius at that thing, because again, there's always room for improvement. But a lot of the experts are like really darn good at a subject, like you've been designing. You know a lot about it. For us mere mortals talking with you, you might as well be a genius level intellect in that field. And that has really helped me go through the stages of learning when picking a new subject, like running a business, for example, which is a skill. Leadership, it's a skill. And it's helped me not quit too early on because I just realized it's a necessary process. So being able to recognize those stages for whatever reason has been helpful for me as I go through learning.
Yeah, for sure. Frameworks are so helpful in just understanding like phases of growth or what are all the possible options to grow my business, where are all the possible skill sets that are required to be a designer. I really lean on frameworks a lot lately as well. It feels like someone's chewed your food for you before you digest it. But yeah,
Good enough.
I feel like there's one thing I'm very passionate about is training and helping young designers, because I was that 15-year-old that had a mentor. So I had an enormous like and I'll shout him out. I always do. His name's Brent Spohr. He ran an agency and he went to my church and he was the only guy who had a MacBook, and he literally taught me everything he knew. He gave me his invoice templates
Wow.
and he gave me his frameworks. He gave me the questions that he asked. He would record his screen and upload Dropbox videos, and I just study how he used Photoshop to build websites. And like once you have frameworks, then it just makes everything easier because you're taking like enormous steps forward because you're like, this worked for this guy, it will work for me. And yeah, I lean on frameworks as well. And having a mentor definitely helped me avoid a lot of challenges that other people have getting business, feeling confident. But yeah, right now, if you were to ask me now, fast forward, 32-year-old Anthony, my challenges are just learning what opportunities are the most valuable. Being overwhelmed sometimes, how do you build a framework to make decisions? I want to know,
Ooh la
what
la.
makes me happy, what I'm the most qualified for, and where I can deliver the most value to clients. And that's sometimes challenging.
Yeah, absolutely. I really like that approach. It's like, what frameworks can I use to optimize for making decisions? I've used so many over the years, and I think that's something that, like you said, in for different phases of life, that will probably change as you modify it and iterate on it. I was going to ask you next, or right after the initial question, about what experiences have uniquely shaped your leadership style or your business acumen or business strategy. I think you've answered some of that with mentors. I know you're a big fan of that. You've had really great mentors over the years. You've used frameworks. Are there other things for you that you think might be relevant to our audience for as you think about growing as a business owner and business leader that have been super pivotal to help you learn that skill of actually running a business?
Yeah. So I haven't had too many real jobs. I've been a freelance designer most of my career, so I only have a handful of experience operating as an employee inside of a business. I feel like just because of that, I have like a unique. I've always been like the third party. As a freelancer, a client hires you, they all work for the company and you're the random third party that's on Zoom or showing up at the meeting, and you're the word agency, you're an agent, you're like outside of the group. So I always was part of the project, and then when the project ended, I was gone. So I operated in the cracks of all these different companies as a lowly freelancer. So I knew like how it feels to be like on the outside looking in. And I feel like I was able to have more empathy for the people that I was hiring full time or the contractors I brought in. I wanted people to feel included. And the jobs that I did have, I worked at Coplex. Zach Ferris, another one of my mentors, I would say,
Yeah.
had like really unique operating styles. Like every Friday, we would have something called Clean Eats, and they would pay for lunch for us, like all good tech startups do at some point. But they would do it every Friday. We would get together. They would call everybody in from all the offices, and someone would teach us something. And it was every Friday for an hour. Every Friday, on Wednesday, they would take our orders and we would just learn. And it was just like, I always thought, man, this is crazy. Like, there's like 30 people in this meeting. This was like the most
That's
expensive
cool.
meeting ever. And they're paying for our lunch. And it was just like everyone getting around every week at the dinner table or something and learning something. And it like helped me, it made me like as an employee, like value that they care about our well-being, our healthy eating. Wasn't
Yeah.
always healthy, but most of the time it was. And then teaching us something, like somebody would teach us like how to get a loan for a house or something, or some startup guy would ask for feedback on his pitch, or we do like
Yeah.
a lunch and learn or something. That was really cool. And I've adopted that Oxy Socials, and we just like play games, get to know each other, just try to not talk about work and be creative and have jam sessions. And we do it every Friday. We're going to probably start opening it up for freelancers to join if they want.
Nice.
We work together. Maybe you could come at some point.
Yeah, that's cool, dude. I love it. And we both share Zach as a mutual mentor. And one of the things that has stuck with me has just been, again, shout out to Zach's generosity over the years with sharing about business. I remember there was a time like I was really stressed. My books were a mess. And Zach got on a call with me on a Zoom call and he walked me through some things to look out for. I just can't forget that. You know, that was instrumental to helping me understand my books better. And I probably was at that point, at the point of conscious incompetence, where I was like, okay, I know some things, but crap, there's still so much I don't know. I am dumb as a brick about bookkeeping. And he was patient with me to explain things, even though I felt so dumb. He took the time. So Zach is a real one. So you and I are big proponents of the ecosystem here in Phoenix metro area with startups. We've worked with startups to bigger companies and freelancers out here in the ecosystem. But how do you see the tech ecosystem here in Phoenix evolving in the next couple of years? Are there things that you've seen from working with so many different companies?
Okay, my first experience in the Arizona tech ecosystem was through my original mentor, Brent Spohr. I got my first client at Gangplank Chandler when it was like just an extra side room in this tech office. I don't even remember. I just dropped out of high school. I drove my white Ford Mustang like 45 minutes from North Phoenix to like Chandler. And I met my first client, and it was like this guy who sold bionic bands. And they were like
Wow.
those bands that give you energy and balance and strength. And I'm pretty sure it was a scam, but they did pretty well, and they would sell these things at the mall back in like the early 2000s. But from like literally the first day I did anything related to the Arizona tech ecosystem, I got my first client $30 an hour at 15 years old. That is like the common thread of everything. Like the Yes Phoenix Slack channel has connected me to, we're probably connected through that, to be honest, if I really think about it. Pro tip, you could set little notifications on Slack if people say certain words. And that alone has connected me to so many cool opportunities and people.
Oh my
I
God.
won't tell you the words, but that Slack channel is amazing. And seriously, some of my best friends I've met through that. The events are cool. I want to do more. I want to invest more into the ecosystem because I've definitely benefited from it. I try to, like this next year or so, I want to talk more. A lot of what I do is outside of the ecosystem. I do stuff with foster kids and people that just don't even know it exists. Once you know that it exists, like it's just very easy. Like just join the Slack channel and then just see what people are talking about and just message people. And I think Phoenix, one theory I have about Phoenix is that people come here to reinvent themselves from wherever they're from. So people are just very open. I have friends that have moved to like Seattle and other cities, and you have to have these credentials. You have to have Google and Amazon and Microsoft and 10 plus years, or no one respects you. Like Phoenix, if you have a laptop and you're cool, people are like, all right, let's build something. And I feel like that's extremely unique here. And There's definitely untapped potential. I love hiring people from here. I think a mission that I have is I don't want to see people move away. I think people move away because no one stayed here to build the culture.
Yeah.
And there's definitely some positive signs. There's some cool stuff. I need to get more involved, to be honest, but I benefited a lot for sure.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for sharing that. It's interesting you use the word people come here to get reinvented, because if you think of the mythical creature, the phoenix that burns to ashes and gets rebuilt or reborn or something like that, that's a very interesting analogy. If you think about it, to reinvent
Phoenix
yourself.
Rising.
Phoenix Rising, shout out to the Phoenix Rising soccer team. But thank you so much for sharing that. As you look back on your journey, as you reflect, are there certain things now, as a designer, 17 plus years, and business owner, that you know now and you wish you knew back then? 15-year-old Anthony, think for his $30 an hour client.
I don't know. In a lot of ways, I feel like I still operate the same way that I did back then. I built a company out of necessity because I couldn't handle all the work I was getting. So I just had to like naturally hire and train and scale. But one thing, like okay, it's super basic, something that's still new for me. And this is embarrassing to admit, like before my first job at a startup accelerator, I didn't even use a calendar. Like I would white knuckle everything on a notebook, like using Google Calendar. That changed my life. Super basic, but like now I send my wife calendar invites if she wants to do anything. Like it's like real embarrassing. But just I think what's hard being a designer is you're not quite an artist, not like a writing poetry in the woods and like making music, and then you're not quite an engineer, like somebody who is extremely technical and builds complex systems. Like you're something in the middle. And so you're part artist, part scientist, and you're just this weird middle ground and you don't know which. You have to have a little of both. I always envied engineers because I felt like they build the thing that customers actually use. The designer is just like the decorator, the like wallpaper, interior,
Yeah.
like moving furniture around. And then I always envied the artist because the artist is like free spirited and creative and truly creative. So as a designer, you got to juggle both. And I think I just wanted, if I were to talk to myself when I was young, just like embrace both. Don't try to be one or the other. Like that is your unique skill set, is that you think
Hmm.
incredibly logically, but you're also a highly sensitive person that knows how to capture emotions
Yeah.
visually. So I don't know. That's what came to mind just now.
That's amazing. And that's probably a good tension to have, not just for designers, but I think it applies to so many other things, like that tension between logic and artsiness, if I could use that word. I have poetic license to use it. And just balancing that tension and dealing with that tension. I'm sure some people are bent a lot more towards one or the other, but I think it's a good tension to have.
Yeah, I always say creativity is a science and like it's a skill. Like it's truly it's a practice. You can't create good art if you're not consuming good art. And you have to learn how to see, and then you will be able to, like, the first time I ever got good at a design is that you just try to recreate what other people are doing, like just verbatim copy it. And by nature of copying it and breaking it down and understanding how it was constructed, you learn the vocabulary to recreate and to break that apart and then to create something truly original. But yeah, creativity as a science is like a value that we have at Oxy and that I truly believe in. It's not like you started this saying, the man, the myth, the legend. It's just a practice. I hate going to the gym. I'm not a gym guy. If I lifted weights every day, I'd be as muscular as my dad, but I don't do it. If I were to do it, I know I have the genetics and the structure and to become a bodybuilder, but I refuse because I'm lazy. So creativity, I think, is the same way.
That's pretty cool. Thanks for sharing that. Have you read the book Still Like an Artist, Austin Kleon? And that's something I really love that book. I have it behind me here somewhere on the shelf. Oh yeah, there it is. Every so often I flick through the pages again to go through it. And he talks about this idea of stealing like an artist, of you replicate, you tweak it, you adapt it to your own taste. And the more you do that, the better you get, right, at making art or any piece of work. And that's something I think that we don't do enough of. At some point, you got to replicate from the greats. And then you learn that. I did Seth Godin's Alt MBA program 2019. And then one of the things we talked about is the fear. A lot of folks don't even take that first step because of fear. For the artists who real artists ship, that's Steve Jobs. But for the artists who ship, it's not an absence of the fear of ridicule or I'm not going to be any good at it, but it's in spite of the fear, I'm going to make art. I'm going to keep doing it because I know over time I will get better. It's like if you're learning how to make pottery and you're going to start and you're going to suck. You're going to have the teacher teach you, maybe you read some things until you actually start practicing it and making pottery. You don't get anywhere, but your pottery is going to suck for a while. But by, I don't know, pot number 100, you're going to be way better than you did in the first 10 or first 20. So I like how you call creativity as science. As you repeat and you get better and you iterate, you get better.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess the one thing that you can't teach is taste, and you can develop a taste, and like there's a ditch at both ends. If you copy forever, you end up developing like your original and authentic style, and is really hard to. Something else I believe is everything is a remix. You just remix and then you reflect that with your own identity or the client's brand personality, and you're able to create a truly unique looking website, brand, product. And trying to marry all that is like the designer's job, is like marry the creative and marry the scientific, and own and ship and meet deadlines and own the results and try to capture human emotion and business needs. So you're like a conductor. I feel like you're trying to put it all together. And are you a musician? I forget.
Thought of type. I really like music, but I didn't pay attention to mom all those years ago when she mentioned I should learn an instrument or whatever. But in more recent years, I picked up bass guitar and I sucked at acoustic, though I'd like to learn acoustic. But bass, I do know how to play, though I haven't picked it up in a little while now. So I'm rusty. I like music. But oddly enough, still don't see myself as a musician. Like I feel like I'm a wannabe still.
Imposter syndrome.
Yeah, there we go. You play drums, right? You play drums.
Yeah, I still do to this day.
Awesome.
A couple Sundays a month.
Wow, that's cool.
It's very similar. Like I feel like there's patterns in music and percussion. There's repetition. You have to do multiple things in your head at the same time. Like I was talking about with the designer. I feel like they're very similar and they complement. It's like a similar thinking pattern, drumming and designing. I know that doesn't make sense, but I love metaphors and they're very similar to me.
I should probably call this episode something along those lines. Can figure out a good way to connect drumming or percussion and business and design.
Yeah, it all comes back to just playing around.
What advice would you give to budding entrepreneurs or those on the fence, right? Maybe they want to start a business or make a leap, right? Promotion or whatever, but they find themselves afraid or stuck. From your own anecdotal experience, you've done some pretty legit projects, high stakes, and you've done really well. What advice would you give such a person who's on the fence, on a precipice, and they're scared to jump?
I'm assuming scared to jump is like scared to quit your job or scared to go all in or raise money or believe in themselves. Yeah, I don't know. I would definitely say there's so much content like this out there of people telling you their frameworks, of people telling you their motivation. You got Gary Vee on one hand saying don't sleep and work super hard and abandon your family to find success. And then you have other people that are saying that like a cold plunge in a sauna will develop success and and everything in between. And if you take all the advice in the world, it all cancels to zero. So knowing what advice to listen to was like the hardest thing for me, because I'm sure if you're in a position where you're able to even contemplate starting a business or skilled enough to take a leap of faith, you're smart and you're talented to some degree. And you just have to believe that you are and then execute. But there's plenty of good advice out there, and just knowing, to me, what I always told myself is if I take everyone's advice, it'll cancel out to zero. And the framework that I use is don't take advice from people you don't want to be. Look at their whole
Ooh.
life. Look at their marriage. Look at how close they are to their family. Look at how they treat servers. Ask their employees how what they think of them. Don't look at the car. Don't look at the dollar amount in the bank account. Don't look at the prestige. Don't look at the whole person. And if you take that person's advice, you will on a trajectory to become that person. And do you want to become that person became to achieve
Wow.
what you are jealous of or desiring? So to me, it's the reverse, and maybe a more positive way to say it is only take advice from people you want to be and look at their whole life. Are you willing to sacrifice sleep? Are you willing to sacrifice relationships? Are you willing to be insanely risky? Or are you a more conservative, like kind of stable person that doesn't want to take those kind of risks? And I think to me that helped me find my center, and it helped me like know what to listen to. It's okay, I respect this person, and they might not have as much money or they might not have as much success, but I admire them because of their whole personhood, the way they treat their family. So that's what made sense to me. And that's the only like truth I really hold on to that I think is semi-original. But
Yeah, that's huge. Thank you so much for sharing that. Appreciate it. One last thing. What do you do to recharge, Anthony, when you're not designing or leading design teams and building a business? How does Anthony recharge?
I get as far away from internet connection as possible.
Is that even
I love
possible?
hiking. Oh, definitely. I love hiking in Arizona. If you don't like hiking, I don't know what else you do around here sometimes, but there's so many mountains and it's the suffering. My brain's always going. I'm like anxious. So like when I'm hiking hours and hours, hot, sweaty, and it's like meditative. And I feel like my brain can rest. And it's the only thing I do where I feel like super at peace. And it also lets you like work out some ideas. You can listen to some good podcasts with a bunch of advice that will cancel each other out. And then yeah, it's my most creative. And you feel like you've accomplished something. I lived in San Diego for 2 years and I lived on the beach in Mission Beach. And I thought like running the beach would help me. Like it would be the same thing as like hiking Camelback or hiking South Mountain in Phoenix. And it wasn't. The view never changes. It's always just the beach and it's flat. And I realized moving away from Arizona and coming back how much I love the mountains and how change in elevation and hiking is just a part of like my everyday life. And it's hard in the summer, but you can wake up at 5 a.m. and be a crazy person like me. But that's how I recharge.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that, Anthony. It has been a pleasure to have you on the Inflection podcast with me. And it's been a long time coming, but thank you for making it happen.
Thanks, man.